Hello, today I'd like to talk about Among the Sleep. Among the Sleep is was successfully kickstarted game, a horror game where you play as a 2-year-old child and go through sort of his nightmares and how he sees the world. And I thought it was a very interesting game, but it wasn't really what I expected. And I think, well, I guess let me just go through it. So, firstly, the game sort of presents itself like Amnesia. You have a limited inventory. There's enemies you have to evade. You have to collect items and use them to solve simple puzzles, and all the puzzles are pretty straightforward. One would think, oh, Amnesia plus, playing as a 2-year-old equals amazing horror game. And I think playing as a 2-year-old was a really good game mechanic, just because a 2-year-old enhances sort of that feeling of vulnerability, that helplessness, which I think is very important in horror games, and something I've talked about, Neverending Nightmares with the asthma and sort of the lack of player skills, or the player is very sort of weak and vulnerable. Perhaps not to the extent that a 2-year-old is, but in the early levels they do some interesting things in terms of, like, what a 2-year-old can and can't do. You can push a chair to open a door, but you can't reach the door. That sort of gets lost a little as he goes into the sort of nightmare worlds. Just because the less realistic the world is, the sort of less important that notion of scale is. But really, although it shares a lot of similarities to Amnesia, I'd almost say it's more of a sort of Gone Home experience. Because while there are a few enemies, it doesn't seem like that they set out, we're going to create, a terrifying horror game. I think they said, we're going to create a game that tells a story about this, and it's going to tell the story through, exploring the worlds and and finding items and learning more about the characters and whatnot. But it's interesting because, as a Kickstarter backer, that's not sort of the game that I was expecting. Certainly, I have no regrets backing the project, but I think, in some of the critical press, they sort of say, like, oh, this isn't really a, super scary or whatever. But, the question is, does it need to be, is that really, if the creators didn't want to make a horror game, a, super scary, Amnesia, whatever style horror game, that's their choice. I guess maybe it gets a little more complicated with Kickstarter and the expectations of the backers, but certainly as a backer, I'm pleased with my pledge regardless. So anyway, let me just talk more about the actual game. It's pretty interesting. It starts off, in the real world, and you get this talking teddy bear companion, and the teddy bear companion serves as your amnesia lantern, although I guess you don't have to collect gas, but basically if it's dark, you hug the teddy bear and it glows sort of, it has this warm glow, which I thought was a very sort of interesting choice, and sort of keys in on the safety of, objects and things like that. I mean, I had a favorite teddy bear, from when I was a baby to, the point where I was much too old to, be lugging this teddy bear around. Maybe my insomnia is because I don't sleep with my teddy bear anymore. Maybe that's the problem. I mean, I think that's sort of interesting. Just personally, though, I wasn't as big of a fan of the teddy bear talking to you. Which, I mean, I understand, in the imagination, that teddy bear is real and can interact with you. But just personally, I mean, while it's not, a super horror game, I think, to me, the atmosphere would be better if I didn't have someone who, is like, oh, you should do this, and this is what's going on, or, oh, I'm so scared. I mean, I would have liked to just sort of, take in my own sort of meaning from things. But, I mean, the teddy bear doesn't have a ton of lines, so it's sort of a minor complaint. And the nightmarish dreamscapes you go through are pretty interesting. I think they did a lot of really clever things with level design, and even though they're sort of confusing, and I maybe sort of kind of got lost a few times, but they're essentially guiding you where you need to go by the position of lights, which I think is something I talked about in Last of Us. They have the lights on the exit sign, or, just signs that say exit. And I think it's a really effective gameplay mechanic, and it definitely helped me get through the game, whereas, I would have been lost and confused otherwise. The puzzles are pretty straightforward, which certainly I liked. I mean, they're not really puzzles, I mean, in that they challenge you. They're just sort of these obstacles you have to do, which certainly I don't have a problem with. I mean, I'm not one who's a fan of, sort of the esoteric puzzles, especially because you're a 2-year-old, and how are you supposed to, figure out these crazy Silent Hill style riddles. So I think the puzzles work, and I mean, in general, there was only like 1 or 2 parts where I had to kind of cheat and look at a walkthrough video because I was sort of lost in I think like the last level. It gets slightly confusing, but I mean, some of the things I probably should have known better, but I don't know. I'm not sure what would be the best sort of game design solution for me getting stuck, if it was just a hint, or just accepting the fact that I got stuck. Some people are always going to get stuck, maybe. I mean, certainly with Neverending Nightmares, we're trying to make a game in which it is impossible to get stuck. You'll always be able to make forward progress, but I mean, I think that's more of a, goal than what will practically happen. So anyway, I liked the game, and I thought it told an interesting story, and I think, some of the nightmare escapes don't exactly tie into the theme of the game, at least not in a way that was obvious to me, but maybe I'm sort of missing things. But I mean, like, if, it all had this sort of cohesive, this is the statement it's making, that might work a little better, because I think it's definitely trying to make a statement, and I think it has a good message, but I'm not sure, you know, how everything fit in, you know, all the elements of the game fit into, you know, telling that message. And I mean, it's kind of hard, and I don't know if, you know, I mean, certainly I try, with Neverending Nightmares, everything, you know, psychological sort of has a meaning, but I mean, I'm sure there are some things people might say, you know, how does this work, or what does this mean, and I mean, you know, certainly some people question the baby monsters in Neverending Nightmares, which I completely understand. You know, at this point, people don't get them. You know, when the story is finished, you know, telling, I feel like, you know, once we have the end, I feel like maybe the baby monsters will make more sense to people. I mean, because there is a point to them, but it's totally not obvious, you know, until you reach the end. But I don't know, maybe people will be saying the same criticisms about Neverending Nightmares, which, I mean, is fine. I understand that, you know, not everyone will get everything, and you know, to some extent, if you make it too obvious, there are some elements I'm thinking about adding, but I'm worried they're almost too obvious, and they're sort of, you know, beating people over the head with the theme, and I don't know, we'll have to see how that goes. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'd check out Among the Sleep if you're interested in horror or story games. It was a little buggy for me, but you know, I think I saw on the Steam forums that they're working to fix all that, so maybe wait a little bit. Anyway, thanks for watching.